It's time for the biggest story of the day. This is What Made the Cut with JJ and Alex on 97.5, the KSL Sports Zone.
Doug Smith brings you this portion of the program, an incredible selection of Kia, Subaru, Chevy, Jeep, Dodge, or Ram, all located in American Fork, Spanish Fork, and now in Linden as well. Check them out. Nobody knows cars like Doug. We love those guys. So I want to know, like from an X's and O's standpoint, we didn't get to break down the full bowl games that everybody was invited to, and I'm looking at this Utah versus Nebraska game in the Vegas Bowl. Obviously, a very different field playing in that particular stadium this time of year for the Utes. What do you think the vibe is with Kyle Whittingham and playing Nebraska that is going through quite its own turmoil,
right.
That doesn't really know what the future of their quarterback and their coaches and all this thing sort of looks like? I know Matt Rule signed an extension, but it always felt like a little bit icky still.
Right.
So Nebraska, blue blood. I mean, it's still considered, I think, a blue blood, I think.
Oh, it's still a brand, still recognizable, but like we talk about adapt or die, it's nostalgic. It's not hot and hip. Does that make sense?
It's not the
that
hip and cool
N
bowl.
logo is nostalgic.
Of course.
It's not fresh and new. And that's the problem with Nebraska. As far as on the football field, Utah is a much better football program and a better team, and they should roll in this game. I don't know what Utah's bringing. I don't know who's going to play. And that's the problem with bowl games these days is I have no idea who they're going to put out on the field. Was Northwestern better than Utah 2 years ago?
Of course not.
Why did Northwestern win that game?
What was it, 14-7?
It was an awful football game.
Gross.
And left a sour taste in my mouth about bowl games. Utah hasn't won a bowl game since the Heart of Dallas Bowl.
Which is crazy.
I was at that bowl game.
Witt was like on a tear of just
an
winning
unbelievable
them all.
streak.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I don't know when private equity is going to pass on all the bowl games, by the way. They're going to be like, no, that's not worth it to us.
Who knows what this is going to mean.
Joining us on the program, Steve Bartle, our Utes insider for KSLSports.com. Let's start there with the actual football part. That makes me feel a little bit more comfortable, Steve. Nebraska, Utah, when you saw the matchup, what's the team feel like about with this matchup? It's a 7-5 Nebraska team. You're a 10-2, way better on paper team. If you're the University of Utah, you're coming in a top 15 team. Nebraska is also going through some weird turmoil. So what's the vibe like on the Hill about this game being played in Vegas?
Great question there, Alex. I don't know. We haven't had the opportunity to talk to him, so I don't know for sure. But I will say this: I having talked to some people around the program, there's excitement, understandable. Maybe not the best matchup, maybe not the most exciting bowl game, but I think after last season, 2024 being what it was, being as difficult as it was, you don't want to take these types of seasons for granted. And I think, with the opportunity to play in Las Vegas, which is a bowl game that is actually it's up, how it's viewed and its brand, and it's really gained a lot of notoriety as a really solid bowl game, for programs to get to. So, there's a lot to it, but I think there is excitement for Utah to play in this game. I don't know who's going to be playing in it, who's going to be sitting out just yet. I'm sure we'll learn about that over the next few days and weeks. But, in terms of talking to people around the program, there's excitement for it, obviously within reason, being the fact that, you were on the cusp of a college football playoff opportunity, and to not get on that, it's with the game and the way that it's evolving, it's turning into playoff or bust. With what Notre Dame has decided to do and opting out of the Pop-Tart Bowl, and I think you're just going to continue to see more and more of that trend as we move forward, unless there are changes to the college football playoff. But in terms of Utah, I think there's it's a solid level of excitement, I would say.
Yeah, we'll wait and see who's going to play in this game. As I just got done talking to Alex, for me, that's the difference. Is Spencer Fano and Caleb Lomu going to play in this game? Are both quarterbacks going to play in this game? Who's hurt, who's not? I have no idea. You're right. And the fact that they haven't done any media or anything about the bowl game is kind of weird, to be quite honest, because you saw what the Pop-Tarts Bowl did this weekend. They were all hype. It was great, and all the coaches have talked. But I don't know. We'll have to wait and see on that. But ultimately, you're right. A bowl game is something that they should be excited about, and a chance to play a brand like Nebraska can be a lot of fun, and it would be their first chance to get a win over Nebraska. One player that I don't know if he's going to be there or not, even though it looks like he's going to enter the transfer portal, is Isaac Wilson. He was there last year, decided to stay. What do you know about the situation with Isaac Wilson? Is he definitely a go this time?
Yeah, I think the situation with Isaac is obvious, right? He returned to the program last year and did a lot in 2024 as a true freshman, thrust into a difficult situation and did his best to make the most of it. And, returning this year, there was optimism, there was hope that, he could learn and develop behind a quarterback like Devin Dampier. But obviously with the emergence of Bird Ficklin and just the way that he was able to take off, right, in the sort of role that he was utilized, it was clear that, he became the future of the position behind Devin Dampier. So, with the emergence of Bird and the offense, Isaac, essentially, this is essentially the writing on the wall for him, and he's going to hit the portal and he's going to look for a new opportunity, to find somewhere that can maximize his ability. I think Isaac has the talent, right? The natural physical ability to play at a really high level, at that quarterback spot. He just needs to get into the right situation where, he can learn, he can develop. He needs time. That's been my opinion after last season, right? Going through what he went through in 24, where, things just sort of fell apart. He struggled a lot. His confidence was probably shook, as games wore on, and that can have a really tough effect on players. So I think finding the best situation for him will be important, and that probably means potentially going down a level to the Mountain West or something like that, where he can go down a level and just kind of work his way into playing at a good level again. I think that's going to be really good for him. So Isaac is still a kid that has a ton of potential, and I hope that he's able to find a good landing spot to unlock those talents.
Utah State's looking for a quarterback.
Yeah, well,
yeah.
I think that'd be a really good fit.
That'd be amazing.
I would hope that it'd be a good fit. Well, Steve, before we get to the big news of the day and the elephant in the room that we're kind of having a hard time wrapping our head around, one thing that we're hoping to wrap our head around is Kyle Whittingham's tenure at Utah and what that's going to be. And I know that people at some point were like, oh, here's the timeline. The board's going to make a decision, and we're going to find out. But what's the reality on I know we don't know, but what's the timeline for when he's going to make that decision? Is it something that they've tried to make known at all, or is it just we're all sitting and waiting around, sitting on our hands to see if Kyle Whittingham's going to be back?
No, there really hasn't been any sort of communication about when a decision is going to be announced. But, in regards to this decision, I think we'll see something here pretty soon. I don't have a firm timeline. I can't say that it's going to be by this date or to look for something there. But, obviously we know that Kyle had a contractual obligation to notify Utah of whether he was going to retire or whether he was going to return for 2026 last Friday. So we know that came, and we haven't seen anything just yet. And, with talking to people around the program, I would anticipate that we'll see something here soon. Again, I don't have specifics or hard timeline, but as I've talked to people, I feel like, we are going to see Kyle come back. I think that's been the way things have been trending. It's been interesting having these conversations about Kyle and where he's at in his career, because there's a lot of things that point to, retirement, but there's also a lot of things that point to him, wanting to come back. His entire family was out at the Kansas game, and we're taking photos after his press conference together as a family. And it's like, you just don't see that normally, so there's things like that. But then he's talking about, his desire to continue coaching this team and this group specifically, kind of reigniting the passion for coaching again in him, and something that he's truly enjoyed. So, I think that's kind of where things have been trending, is Kyle leaning towards returning in 2026. And obviously with that is Morgan Scalley in his role, right, as head coach in waiting, and what that means. And I think, if Kyle does come back, it's a good thing. It's a good indication of those two being on the same page with everything going into 2026. And I think that'll be important. So that's what I've got with Kyle. I think we'll see something here soon. I was told, something this week potentially, but certainly before the bowl game is when I think we'll see something on Kyle. But that's sort of like why we haven't had the typical media availability that we've had in years past, right? Like last week was signing day, and typically we get a media availability to talk about the signing class. We didn't get that. We didn't get media availability to talk about the bowl game invitation, and so it's just kind of all hinging on this and that going public before we start to get some updates on some of the latest happenings up there with Utah football.
He's, you know what it is? He doesn't want to get the question from Steve and PK. More importantly, he's like, what do you think, Sparky? I'm not going to answer your question because it's going to get asked. And so maybe there's some writing on the wall there. We'll read into anything, I guess.
Well, I think something that Utah Athletics is happy to talk about right now is the big news today that the University of Utah has landed a private equity deal that's expected to generate $500 million for the athletic program. What can you tell us about this, Steve? I think a lot of people are trying to wrap their head around this. I know you've had to immerse yourself in it. What are some of the things that stand out to you about this deal and what it means for Utah athletics moving forward?
Yeah, this is a big one for Utah, and I think what was maybe most surprising was the timeline of when this started and when it all came to be. Mark Harlan shared today in their availability with us that these conversations started over a calendar year ago in regards to when this idea was initiated and when they were tasked with starting to figure out ways to put this all together. So this has been in the works for quite some time. And, with this deal, it's not finalized just yet. So, President Randall shared that is expected to be finalized in the early part of 2026. So there's still things to be done on that front, but I think this is really significant for Utah. First and foremost, obviously with the rev share and the demands that has put on universities to pay student athletes directly, it's created a lot of difficulties, financial difficulties for programs across the country. You're seeing programs that are sharing, that they're dealing with significant deficits financially. And, fortunately for Utah, they're not in the same situation as other programs in terms of their deficit, but they're still operating in a deficit. And to have this, I think, is significant to address, first and foremost, the rev share portion of this new era, right, where you are on the hooks for $20.5 million, which is expected to rise, I think, 4% next year to something like $21-22 million. And so you've got to account for that. But then too, this is significant in the sense that it's also created a new LLC for Utah, which is really going to be fascinating in terms of what impact that actually has on the university to be able to, utilize some of their brand, just parts of their brand, players and logos and that sort of thing, and turn it into more revenue generating opportunities. And I think that's something that I'm really fascinated to see what sort of impact that has on Utah athletics and their ability to generate, potentially more third-party NIL deals. The $500 million is a great infusion of capital for Utah, and that's going to alleviate a lot of the burden, on donors, which then frees them up to be utilized in other ways. And so, you're essentially covering your bases, securing your floor with this capital investment, and allowing creating opportunities for money to be utilized in other ways instead of being funded for this new burden of rev share. So I think that is going to be really fascinating to see what sort of impact that has on Utah moving forward, because we know that this college game, it's no longer the college game that we grew up watching. This is now evolving day by day, month by month into a professional sport. And this is a big step in that way. And Utah being the first to embrace private equity. Obviously, you hear private equity and you sort of cringe because, the private equity, it has sort of a bad reputation. But the thing here is, for Utah, is you're preserving the emotional investment by having your big donors involved in this deal the entire way and maintaining decision-making power with President Randall and Mark Harlan. That also is going to preserve the identity and soul of Utah in this private equity deal. So there's a lot more to unpack here, but the big thing here is that Utah has created a new LLC. They've maintained decision-making power, and they've found a partner in Otro Capital that they feel is a really good fit in terms of their vision and what they want the University of Utah to be. There's a lot of motivation with President Randall and Mark Harlan and the sports programs, each individually. They want to be among the best in the country. They want to be recognized as one of the top athletic programs and one of the top universities in the country. And this is a big tool to help them take steps towards achieving those goals.
Steve Bartle, Ute Insider for KSLSports.com. You can see his byline there, and anything that does move on this deal and any other facets that come into this thing, he'll be all over it, of course. Steve Bartle. Steve, thanks for hanging out, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you guys.
There you go, Steve Bartle.